Well, good morning. Welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. How are you all today? I'm good, and I'm going to do a video review on a movie review on The Road, the film The Road. I wasn't going to do it, but I'm going to do it. So we'll get to that in a minute. Welcome to everybody, all the new people, both on YouTube and on Patreon. We continue to grow on YouTube, which is great. Love having you all. And we're just exploding over on Patreon. And there are reasons for that. For those of you who are wondering, I've started putting a lot more content on Patreon that I just don't put anymore on YouTube. Today I just put up one on OPSEC, which I call OPSEC Schmopsec, because I think this is a subject that is extremely misunderstood in the preparedness community. I think people are worried about things that they shouldn't be, and they're not worried about things they should be. And I talk about it. I talk about the time that I had 2 contracts put out on me by organized crime. That was a fun story. And if you, of course, you pretty much know what happened, because here I am, right? But if you want to know the whole story, then I tell it over there, and I explain in pretty good detail what you ought to be worried about, what you shouldn't be worried about, and how to handle things. And by the way, we got some smart folks over there. I want to especially send out a welcome to those who have joined on the Stonemont level. And that gives you direct access to be able to ask me, questions that I'll get back to you in fairly complete answers and things like that. So great to have all the Stonemonters over there. Okay, so today I'm going to do a review on the movie The Road. And I said the other day when I did the review on The Trail, which I really liked, and some of you all watched it and liked it as well. It had a lot. It's one of those. It had a lot of meaning to that you didn't see the meaning until the last minute of the movie. Interesting movie. And I said that if I was going to do movie reviews, I probably should have started with The Road, but I didn't want to, because I remember having seen it and it was so depressing, so bleak, that at the time I said I never want to see that movie again. And some of you all made the same remarks over on Patreon. But I thought, there are a lot of movies out there that are, and I didn't realize, I'll be honest, I didn't realize how many post-apocalyptic and survival and preparedness movies there are out there. I guess I should have, because occasionally you'll run across them, but I didn't realize how many there were. And people have suggested others, and I will watch those too. But I said, I really should go back and watch and do one on The Road. It is the quintessential survival and preparedness, if you want to say preparedness. I would call it a non-preparedness movie. So I will. So I watched it last night, last night. It wasn't as bad as I had remembered. Now, when I say bad, I mean it wasn't, and maybe it's because I knew what was coming. It wasn't as depressing or heartbreaking, let me put it that way, as I remembered. It wasn't as heartbreaking as the book was. Let me say that. So maybe I should start this. The Road, the movie, was based on a book, The Road, by Cormac McCarthy. Cormac McCarthy is the same one who wrote No Country for Old Men. Is that the name was it? He's an Irish guy, Irish-American guy. Good author. He comes at things much differently. He has a different style. And if you read The Road, you saw that it was written actually in almost like scenes, kind of like the way I write, but different. When I read the book, to give you some background here, I read the book when it came out which was the year that my first son was born. And looking back at it, because I've kind of pushed that to the back of my mind, I remember now that it had a great effect on me. I'd never been a parent before. And this is a book about a father and a son, and I'll get to the plot here in a minute. And it had an effect on me, and probably had an effect on my thoughts of preparedness and the responsibility of a father to his son and his family. Okay. And I think it probably had a little bit of effect on how I wrote my books, because this comes at it from one direction. I came at it from a totally different direction in my books. He comes at it from a position of a man who was really not prepared, minimally prepared at most, and you know, see how does it. I wrote my books. Maybe I should hold them up here just to let everybody know your books. Who are you? The Stonemont series. That I wrote, and I wrote these are about a family who and a man and a family who were prepared for the great collapse. Now, not a collapse as bad as happened in the road, but one who is collapsed, because I had read a couple of post-apocalyptic books, and I didn't like the fact that they seemed to come at things from, well, gosh, these people were totally surprised. They, you know, everything's misery. Everything is they weren't prepared at all. And why not? Why weren't they prepared? And I know that it gives a vehicle for, you know, showing how people can learn things and survival and everything. But I didn't want that, because I wanted to promote preparedness. And that's why I wrote these books. Said, look, here's a guy who was totally prepared. So his family did well. People who crossed his path did well if they were the right people. And it shows how preparation allowed them to survive and then rebuild well after a collapse. Those are available through Amazon. I always put the links down here, either through Amazon in paperback or Kindle, or from me autographed. So the link is down there. I should have said also Patreon. The link to Patreon is down there if you'd like to come over and join us on Patreon, and I wish you would. So the road. The story is there is a collapse, some kind of cataclysmic collapse. We don't know exactly what it was, but everything, I mean, the earth, everything is gray. Everything, you know, looks like nuclear winter. All the trees are gone. All the grass is gone. All living things, for the most part, are gone. There is just nothing out there. We see a scene that introduces us to what might have happened when he sees a kind of a bright burning look from the outside, and during his normal life, and then he's telling his wife it's happening, and he starts filling the bathtub. We know that that's to have water. Well, things get worse and worse and worse, and we have a couple of flashbacks that shows how it happened. But the main story is this man with his son, because his wife, after a while, she doesn't have what it takes to see it through. Now we'll get back to that. There will be a difference of opinion on what she did there, but it ends up just he and his son going across the country, trying to survive, trying to find bits of food. They're starving to death as they make this trek across the country, trying to get to the coast, because for some reason he and I don't think the movie says, and I don't remember if the book said, for some reason he thinks if they can get to the coast, everything will be all right. Well, the story is unbelievably poignant. The acting is great. Viggo Mortensen plays the father, and nobody can do certain roles like he can. I'm a big fan of his acting. The boy, I don't know who it was, but he does a great job. It's a boy of about 8 or 10, something like that. And you can imagine trying to get across a wasteland with really no food, no anything, with an 8 or 10-year-old boy trying to, survive, making sure that you keep him alive. And it can be, well, daunting to say the least, but it can be almost an impossible situation. But this follows this through. That is the main stories. Before I get to a few things here, I made a list of some of the lessons in it, so this won't only be a review, it will be some lessons taken from it. I would definitely suggest that if you haven't seen the movie, you do see it. It's available now on Tubi, tubi.com, and I'm sure you can find it other places. I would call it a masterpiece in some areas. It'll make you sad. There will be a lot of, why the hell didn't he do such and such, And I kind of hate movies. Those movies bring us lessons, just like, The Trail did. But it is, the scenes, the settings, the sets are excellent. Excellent. You're going to feel like you're there. You're going to feel like you're in a post-apocalyptic world. The acting is fantastic. There are scenes in there. Well, I'll get to those. Maybe I'll just read my list here, and we'll go down and I'll make some comments. First off, they start with pushing all their stuff. This is after the collapse and after the mom has gone off. It got to the point where the mom couldn't take it anymore, and she is going off into the cold to freeze to death. And there's two ways to look at that, and that is either she didn't have what it took to go on, or she was trying to save them by taking herself out of the need for food and therefore provide more. But I think it was more that she just wanted out of the situation, and so she walked out into the dark. And there's a lesson here, and that is you want people around you who won't bail on you and when things get really tough. I mean, the world's full of people that'll bail on you when things just get uncomfortable, right? So when it comes down to it, especially in a marriage, you want somebody that when things get really, really tough, they're not going to scoot. They're going to stay here and do their best. That particular scene when he's talking to her and she's kind of, we'll get back to that because I think I have that written down. Okay. First off, after that happens, they're pushing their stuff across in a shopping cart. Well, if you have a shopping cart, I think that was a little odd. First off, you have to stay on surfaces, concrete surfaces, okay, to push a shopping cart. Secondly, it's easier to pull something than push something, and so that was a little odd in my opinion. Now, there is the saying that the lesson of the road is to stay off the road. That's right. That's right. Of course, now, if you're scavenging, if you're wanting to try to find stuff, well, the road's where you're going to find stuff, but the road is also where they're going to find you, right? And so staying off the road. He only had a revolver and 2 rounds in it. Now, what happened to the others? Did he have more at one time? We don't know. The wife says at one point, I should have done this when we had more bullets. So we don't know. That's not explained, at least in the movie, and I don't recall whether it was in the book or not. He only has 2 bullets, so right? What's the lesson there? Have plenty of defensive tools and feed for them, right? We all know that. There's a scene where they're pushing their little cart down towards a tunnel, and they hear a bunch of noise, and so they skedaddle up a hill, he and the boy, and they just get over the rise of the hill, and he's peeking over with his revolver with the 2 little shells in it, and they see all these marauders come out of the tunnel on a big truck. Well, you can tell that these marauders are serious people that you want nothing to do with, right? These are the people that are, a matter of fact, there's something in the eyes of one that looks like he wants to, well, we'll get to that in a second. They get it just over this hill. And then as they're watching, this one marauder comes up, walking up the hill to take a leak up at the top of the hill. Well, first off, in those kinds of situations, no marauder is going to walk off, to privately take a leak. They just take a leak at the side of the road in front of everybody, probably. But this kind of sets up a scene. So the marauder goes up the top of the hill, and while he's taking a leak, he looks over and he sees him. And the father's holding a gun at him, says, "Don't you make a noise or I'll kill you." And there's a back and forth there. I won't tell you what exactly it is. But ends up the father shoots the guy. Well, now he's down to one round, right? But now the sound has drawn the attention of all the other marauders who start, the lesson there is, if you are running from a potential threat, distance is your friend. Put distance. When I looked at the lay of the land, it just would have taken them another 20 seconds probably to get somewhere and where they couldn't have been seen if that guy comes up over the hill, and they keep on going. Distance is your friend. Cannibalism will be a thing. Yes, it will. How they portrayed this in the movie, I won't get into details because I don't want to ruin it for you. I address cannibalism. I have a cannibalism scene in, which one is it? I think it's the Revival. In the second book, I have a cannibalism scene in the Revival that I think is a little more realistic than what they had in this, but that's just my opinion. In a down world, cannibalism will be a thing. Slavery will be a thing. They don't really address that there, but I'm addressing that in these books here. Slavery will be a thing. Another thing that I said here is that when he shot the marauder, the reason that he had to do that is because the marauder, as they had an exchange, the marauder was able to get a hold of his son and put a knife to his neck, at which point he shot the marauder. And he grazed his son in the head, shooting the marauder in the head. Now, interestingly enough, a guy that only has a revolver and 2 shells in it, that shows he probably doesn't practice a lot. So I have my doubt. That was one of those things you just put in the movie because it makes a scene. But there's a couple of lessons there, and that is always keep your protectee behind you. The little boy was over there away from the marauder, was able to get to him. And but keep your protectees behind you. And then he takes the kid, and then he's carrying the kid, running through the woods, carrying this kid, trying to get away. He does get away. Another problem that I had was that he carries the kid a lot in this movie. Now, after being shot, grazed in the head, I understand that. But this kid is, 8 and 10. My kids were, certainly able to outrun Dad, at that age. So I'm not sure why he carried this kid so long, but whatever. Maybe I missed something. So then he takes him to a creek and he starts washing off his head in this dirty old creek. Well, I guess if the clip, that the kid took in the scalp wasn't enough, I guess getting a bunch of germs in there, he felt that might be, appropriate. He didn't go over and find a place and boil some water and make sure that it, was sterile before trying to wash out the wound, and so that was not right. He says to the boy at one time, "I'll kill anyone who touches you. That's my job." But there's something. We get a flashback, and he's talking to his wife. This is back when they're still together, and she's kind of, she's starting to doubt his ability to take care of them, because he has not shown the kind of strong leadership that instills faith in them. He's talking to his wife. He says, "I will do anything to protect you all." And she looks at him. She says, "Like what?" Because he's obviously not a person who has projected abilities or the desire to do what it takes. He's pretty much just sitting around waiting for things to happen. Now, there are times to sit around and wait for things to happen, and there are times not to. And what you don't want to do is, when you have a group and you're the leader of the group, you want to be constantly instilling them with faith in your leadership and trust in your leadership, and some hope, some faith that you're going to come out of this all right with all of their help, and you need to involve them in the process. Okay, we're all in this together. We're going to do this. Everybody's important. You know, when people there feel that they are needed and have an important spot in the whole dynamic, they're going to be on board. They're going to stay on board. They're going to do what it takes. So that was a good scene. And so later on when he says, I'll kill anyone who touches you, that's my job. Here again, you know, I don't know, you know, that was more hope. That was more like, but I would ask same thing that his wife had asked, like what? Because at no time, you know, what would you do if you were out there traveling across the expanses of a post-apocalyptic world and you only had 2 shells? Wouldn't you be fashioning weapons of all kinds? I would. I mean, I'd find a big stick and I'd find a sharp piece of metal and I'd put the 2 together and I'd make a bunch of them. And I would fashion weapons, and it can be done. And then I would be teaching the kid how to use some of that stuff so that he can be helpful. And I know an 8 or 10-year-old kid is not going to be the same as, you know, a 20-year-old guy, but my kids at 8 or 10 could do some things that would be very helpful. The son once asks, he says, you can tell this kid was raised right because he has this thing after they've seen the cannibals. I think he says, after the father shoots this guy, the son asks, are we still the good guys? And the father says, yeah, we're still the good guys. And the son says, and the father says, and we always will be. And the son says, no matter what happens. The father says, no matter what happens. So that, I think, is an important thing to put in there, that it's good to always, you may have to do terrible things, as I put in the books. Sometimes the good guys have to do bad things in order to survive, but it depends on how you do them. You can do something in the right way, or you can do something in the wrong way. It could be the same thing, but it depends on your purpose and the way that you do them. Makes all of the difference. They stay in a lot of vehicles. You know, at night they'll stay in a truck, they'll stay in a car. Don't stay in a vehicle. Yeah, I don't know where this came from. Cormac McCarthy, he's a great writer, but probably not a very good survivalist. They look in vehicles for stuff, and then they go to sleep in vehicles. Well, other people wander around vehicles where they're going to look. You know, so you might go to vehicles, abandoned vehicles, to see if you can find anything, a weapon, food, you know, heavier blankets, better clothing, things like this. But you're not, don't stay in one, then get over off the road, get over in the woods and hunker down and make yourself invisible while you get a good night's sleep. Don't enter houses in the daytime. That's right. They come upon this house up on a hill. Right? He uses his binoculars while he's standing right out in the middle of the road, you know, not using concealment at all. And he's looking at it, and then he doesn't see any, you know, activity around it. So they walk up, and he walks up to this big window, and he peers in, of course, making himself a perfect target, silhouette against the light behind him. And he peers in, and then they go in the house. And I won't tell you what happens in the house, but it is a scene and a half. And I suggest, you know, don't go up to houses in the daytime. Watch the house. If you think you want to go in a house and check it, stay out there. Watch it at night. See if you see any lights on. See if you see any activity. You know, you'll never be sorry that you didn't rush into a situation. Okay, there's a scene in one of my books to where somebody says, let's go down there and get in there, and Jim, the lead character, says, well, hold on a second, let's watch. You know, sometimes if you rush into a situation, you find yourself in a situation you can't rush out of if you want to. That's the truth. There's nothing wrong with, and nothing better than taking your time and making sure that you understand the situation before you get into it. so often he uses a little Bic lighter as a torch. One time he goes down into a basement, and then later he goes down into a bunker, and he's using his Bic lighter as a torch. Well, he's running out of gas. First off, you don't make a very big, light with it, and he's using all the butane in his lighter. Why would you do that? Fashion a torch, wrap a bunch of rags around a stick, light it up, and use that. You got a lot more light, and you're not using your fuels. That's one of those. It's probably that the people doing the movie, they didn't have somebody on set that says that's stupid. Let's do it the right way. Always have a weapon. I kind of referred to that. This also, it applies to everywhere in the movie, but especially you see this down in something that happens in the house. He doesn't scavenge very much. They're wearing the same old dirty clothes. It's cold. They're wearing the same old dirty clothes all the time. In a world like that, I'll guarantee you, and I write about that in my books too, there's going to be plenty of warm clothes available, and better boots, and better shoes, and hats. And they're just wandering through this wasteland with the same old scruffy stuff on them, and there was no need to. So, and I go into great detail, even in the first book, the reversion. I go into great detail about what to do right away, scavenge, get things in order, and he doesn't do this. I'm sure he could have found a lot of weapons. I mean, if you just go into an abandoned house, you're going to find all sorts of knives and axes and things like this. He should have got plenty for himself and a couple for his son. Another thing that he does, they spend a lot at night, in the night scenes, they build big fires. Well, nobody's going to do that when you're, being careful of marauders. First off, you don't build a fire. If you need a fire to heat stuff up, you build a small fire, you boil your water if that's what you need, you do whatever it is, and then you put it out and you go someplace else and go to sleep, because you don't know who's watching. And a fire will draw. For you guys who have been out at night, you know how far away you can see a fire. A fire is like a light on your weapon. It's a bullet magnet. He makes a statement. I'm trying. This I think a voiceover where he's kind of talking to himself. It says this in the book. I'm trying to prepare him, meaning the boy, for the day I'm not here. But he doesn't seem to be teaching him much. If it was, and my kids will tell you that they think, they'll tell you, Dad thinks everything is a lesson. Well, pretty much everything is, if you're willing to see it and use it as such. And if you ask either one of them, any of my kids, even my daughter probably, if you watch that movie and say, well, now, what would your dad be doing in this? They'd say, he'd be teaching us the whole way. Do you see this? Hear this? Everything's a lesson. And that's right. So he says that he's trying to prepare the kid to because, and I won't tell you what happens at the end. He's trying to prepare the kid to be able to make it without him, but he doesn't seem to be doing much preparation. And the movie could have been an excellent vehicle to teach survival techniques. It could have been. But instead, it was more, it just seemed to be the purpose of the movie. I see the purpose of the movie at the very end, so you want to watch to the very end. But it was just to see how horrible things could be in a total collapse for someone who's not prepared. If you need any impetus to help you either get busy on or rejuvenate your preparedness efforts, it would be a good movie to watch. You'll find your own lessons in it that I didn't get in here. You might disagree with a couple of the things that I said, but like so many things, these things are open to interpretations, and we see things through our own lens of our own experience and our, whatever. But whatever lesson you get from it, I'm sure will serve you well. And it will, and like I say, this the book, when I read the book, and then I was interested. I was glad to see that a movie came out, and it was pretty close to the book. It probably increased the fire in me to prepare, because it made me go through this mental process that I have suggested before. If you want to know how much food to stock, if you want to know how much to prepare, imagine looking into your young son or daughter's eyes, knowing that there's no more food and they're starving to death. Imagine that. Don't just think about it. Internalize it. Daddy, I'm hungry. Don't we have any food? And then you say, there's no more food. You don't want to be in that position. You want to do everything in the world you can to make sure that never, ever happens. Now, could the thing that happened in the road happen? Yeah, it could. It could. I mean, like I said, it looks like a nuclear winter. I don't know. It could be natural. It could be man-made. Could be God. We don't know. If it's God, then God's will be done, and if He's leading you to prepare, you'd best be at it. And if it's something else, you'd still best be at it. This is why I wrote this series. It's a complete plan contained within a series of novels on how to prepare, how to survive, and then how to rebuild well after a total collapse. Now, would this help after something like happened in the road? Yeah, it would. It would. It sure would. Is this the answer to, or would it help in the case of an EMP or CME? Yes. That's what it's all about. Maximal preparedness for maximal catastrophe. And if you're ready for the maximal, you'll be able to handle the minimal real well. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's my review on the road. I do suggest you watch it. I'm glad I watched it again. We're going to do this on Mondays from now on. I call this, I didn't say this at the beginning, I probably should have. But since people kind of like the movie reviews and have asked for them, I just decided to do them on Mondays, even though I did that a couple of days ago, because, movies and Monday both start with an M, and it just sounds cooler, right? Movie review on Monday, Movie Mondays. So we will do that. Let me know what you think about the movie. Watch it and tell us what you think, or maybe you've already seen it and tell us what you think. If you haven't joined us yet on Patreon, I wish you would. I think you'll get a lot out of it. And if you remember, the way to get the Stonemont series is right down below in the information section, or a pinned comment. You can get them in paperback or Kindle from Amazon, or you can get them from me autographed, and there's an address on how to do that down there. And go over, and having a real understanding of OPSEC is important. And remember that I put that one up over there today.